Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video we're going to be thinking about how to get yourself out of writing an augmented sixth chord. I don't really mean how to avoid writing one. I mean, having written one, well, what do you write next? Because there are people who are sort of vaguely happy about writing an augmented sixth chord in the first place, but then, well, what do you do after that? How do I get a chord that sounds right? So it's good to know how to deal with that. So first of all, a quick reminder, what's an augmented sixth chord? How do I find one? Let's think in C major for the sake of ease, and you can put this into any other key, or you can put it into a minor key and find the same solution for any other key by following this simple recipe that I have formulated. Okay, so if we're in C major, start by finding the lowered sixth degree of the scale. So here we are, C major, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 takes us to A. Lower that note, A flat. Step 2, put the note that's an augmented sixth above that in next. So an augmented sixth above A flat is F sharp. Next, put the tonic in the middle. We're in C major, so the tonic is C. There goes C. And as if by magic, we have now got together an augmented sixth chord. Okay, so the lowered sixth degree of the scale, if you're in a minor key, it's just the sixth. If I'm in C minor, the sixth degree is A flat. But in C major, the lowered sixth is A flat. Augmented sixth above it, F sharp, tonic in the middle is C. Okay, now if I want to double up that tonic, say I want to do something like this, it's an Italian sixth. If I take the original generic chord and I add the note that's an augmented fourth above the bottom, A flat's at the bottom, an augmented fourth above that is D, so you keep the other three notes and you add a D. This is now called a French sixth. Instead of putting that D in, if I put a perfect fifth above the bottom, so A flat's at the bottom, a perfect fifth above A flat is E flat. It's now a German sixth. That's how you do your augmented sixth chords: Italian, French, German. Okay, so how do we resolve them? Where do we go after an augmented sixth chord? Because I know there are lots of people who get frustrated about, oh, it's a great chord this, love to use it. And then I put some other chord after it and it just sounds rubbish. The most important thing to remember about an augmented sixth chord is that it is essentially what we know as a predominant chord. So the most obvious thing to do after any of these augmented sixth chords is to write the dominant chord. So here I've got an Italian sixth followed by the dominant chord, a French sixth followed by the dominant chord, a German sixth followed by the dominant chord. Let's have a listen to those. Here's the Italian. Okay, here's the French. Here's the German. It's quite interesting when you put them back to back like that. You just hear those subtle differences between the Italian, the French and the German. You know, am I hearing any extra notes? Do I hear that augmented fourth that gives it that cheeky French flavour? Do I hear that perfect fifth that gives it that sort of fulsome German flavour? Just a slight nuance in it, isn't it? Okay, but you can hear how there's a kind of voice leading thing, isn't there? If I take the original Italian sixth in my first example here, you can hear the F sharp is screaming to go to G. A flat in the bass is screaming to go to G. So you've got this kind of outer polarity going on, haven't you? So if you've got a couple of G's there, well, chord 5 is one of your few options, isn't it, really? But you've also got other things going on, and this is important because, you know, why is it a predominant chord? Why can't it just go anywhere you want to? Well, if you look at this interval here, you have an augmented fourth, don't you, between C and F sharp. The F sharp definitely wants to pull up to G, but the C also wants to pull down to B, because when you have an augmented fourth like that, it pulls outwards by step. Those two parts moving outwards by a semitone or a half step. So once you've got G and you've got B, this is narrowing your options for what the next chord is. So you can kind of really hear the voice leading there, can't you? But it's also quite smooth, isn't it? You know, that F sharp to G, just a semitone or a half step. Same thing here in the opposite direction. This is just a step or a tone. This is just a semitone or a half step in the bass. So it's all kind of going quite kind of solidly there, the progression. In the French example, you notice that you've even got one common note with that D there, haven't you? So it kind of really helps to have that voice leading and kind of progression by step or by repetition. So all of that is pulling us towards, well, it's chord 5 we're looking for. One little thing to be aware of that I've noted here, just beware of consecutive fifths or parallel fifths when you are resolving a German 6 to 5. What do I mean by that? Well, here we've got a perfect fifth between the bass and the tenor in this particular example of it. It would be very tempting to put a D in the tenor next, because you notice in this chord I've got 3 Gs, I've got a B, there's no D. So why didn't I just put a D in the tenor? Surely that would sound better. Well, it certainly would make that chord sound fuller, but I would have parallel fifths or consecutive fifths. A flat and E flat, G and D. So we've got to be careful not to do that. That's why in this example I've taken the tenor up to G instead of repeating D that I did in the previous examples. So one thing just to watch out for when you're resolving a German 6, try to make sure you haven't got those parallel fifths, those consecutive fifths. Okay, so as we've said, the augmented 6 is really a predominant chord. However, there is one thing you can do very successfully to kind of interrupt that progression, if you like, to have another chord before you get to the dominant chord resolution, and it is to use chord 1 in second inversion, what we know as a 1C in this part of the world, but in other parts of the world you might well know as a 1-6-4. Okay, now if you think about this, if I go 1C or 1-6-4 on to 5, well, you know, that's a progression that we know quite well, because we're going 6-4, 5-3 progression, aren't we? So that 1 in second inversion pulls you on to 5. So if you use an Italian, a French or a German 6 that kind of wants to go to 5, but you put 1 in second inversion before it goes to 5, it's just a way of inserting an extra chord. So let's kind of have a listen to how that works: Italian, French and German. So here's the Italian version where I use the Italian 6, 1 in second inversion, and then 5. Or if I wanted to do it in C minor, I could do this and then have an E flat. Works perfectly well. What about the French resolution? So here's a French 6 followed by 1 in second inversion followed by 5. Or in C minor with E flat in the tenor on the 1C. And here's the German resolution. So German 6 to 1C, then 5. And then, or if I'm in C minor. So those really are the best possible solutions. Now, are there other possibilities? Well, there are, but be careful, because when you go to other chords, sometimes the voice leading doesn't work so well, and sometimes you get this slightly kind of bumpy move between the augmented 6th chord and the resolution. So if you want to do something a little bit outside the box, by all means experiment. Basically, if it sounds good, fantastic, use it. But if you're looking for smooth progression, so this augmented 6th chord is something quite subtle, it's just adding a little bit of colour and then it kind of floats on quite smoothly. Well, really, you're looking at the dominant chord, and if you're not looking for a direct move to the dominant chord, you're looking for 1 in second inversion before you get to the dominant chord. So I hope that's been helpful in thinking about how best to resolve an augmented sixth chord. Well, if you've enjoyed this video, let me invite you to the Music Matters website, www.mmcourses.co.uk. One of the things that people struggle with when they're dealing with all this sort of harmonic stuff is, sometimes people feel they can write it, they kind of know the rules and all the rest of it, but they find it very difficult to hear what's going on. So let me recommend to you, if you go to our website and click on courses, that you have a look at our oral dictation course, which may sound a bit dry, but actually it's a very liberating course. The idea of the oral dictation course is that we build this thing up very gradually, dealing with rhythms. So you listen to rhythms, you learn to hear them and notate them. Then you do very simple kind of melodic progressions. And then we gradually build up so we can start to do things in 2 parts, 3 parts, 4 parts, do very simple harmony, add on these chromatic chords such as the ones we've been talking about in this video, so that you really get to hear the sound of these. Now, of course, once you can hear this stuff, you end up writing much better harmony. You'll be much empowered as a composer. You'll be much empowered as a sight reader, because you'll just look at notes on the page and think, I know what that sounds like. And how frustrating it is for many composers I know, because people keep telling me, I've got this great idea in my head, but I just can't think what the notes are. I don't know how to write it down. So oral dictation, that is the way to make that connection and really empower your ability to hear what you're writing, to have an idea in your head, be able to write it down, to be able to see music on a page and think, I know what that sounds like. So definitely worth blasting through that course if you would really like to acquire those skills. Lots of other courses on there as well if you want to have a look at those. www.mmcourses.co.uk.